Hey Nerf Nation, this is Romatico here, and I am doing something completely different than I normally do today. A couple of you actually commented that you enjoy my paint jobs, so you've also asked, could I do a paint mod video, explain the process. Now, there have been a lot of videos out there explaining how to do the paints, but my style is a little bit different because the way that I like to explain my videos, I like to explain my entire thought process. And we're going to do that this video here. I am actually featuring the video that I did a review on recently, which is the Fortnite Pump SG. I had mentioned that this one is destined to be a LARP weapon, and that is what we're going to turn it into. Now, my personal process, since you do enjoy some of my paint jobs, is that I like to actually conceptualize what I'm going to do with this blaster. So for that, I'm actually going to change views here where you can actually see my workspace here. Please forgive the mess, and I'm going to explain to you a little bit more as we go. All right, so first things first, let's talk blaster here. The Fortnite Pump SG, it does look like it has multiple parts here that come apart. You have this actual iron sight, which looks like it is a separate piece of plastic, as you can see by that crease there. And also this plastic feels different from this one. So I'm assuming that this right here is going to come apart, as will this one right here, and the actual muzzle itself. This door is its own separate piece, as is the priming handle. And from what I can tell, this gray section as well is two separate pieces, I should say. What I don't know is if this is its own piece, and if this red spot and this spot right here at the back of the stock is its own piece. This actual stock extension itself, that I can almost guarantee is separate from the blue. And the trigger, of course, is its own piece. Now, what I want to determine is what color I'm going to make this. Given that this is going into a LARP setting where it is going to be played with on private grounds, I don't have to worry about it looking too realistic. As long as people recognize that I am not using an actual shotgun, they should be fine. Which, given that I am the quote-unquote weaponsmith for that LARP, I do have that trust from other people. And the size of this, it is cartoonish proportions that at close glance, you're not going to be able to see that this is anything but a toy. Even at a distance, I think that people will look at this and say, okay, no, that has to be a toy. There's no shotgun that big or that goofy looking. Now, one of the things you could do here, I'll be honest with you, and depending on what space there is here, you might be able to find a way to hollow this out and make a light. I don't know if I'm actually going to be able to do that, only because of the fact that there's the pump grip here. So what I might do is actually might paint this to make it look like there's some red here, almost like a red light. Now, regarding the paint job itself, obviously I'm going to try to go for a black here, only because of the fact that the matte black is going to look really nice on this blaster with brown. Now, normally I could use a gunmetal, but I'm going to stick with black this time only because with the black, I can actually do a little bit of a spray, like a spray over with metallic, and that way it'll blend in nicely to give like a good faded look to it, I hope. I do have some Behr paint, which is almost like a applewood paint, so it's like a reddish brown. That will definitely go really well right here on the priming handle. Of course, given how dirty this is and how oily this is from previous users, I may need to actually sand this down quite a bit to get some roughness there, and then do an alcohol or a wet sand to actually make it so that all the oils are removed from here so the paint can adhere to this. I may also do the same thing here, or since this is going to be black, I may use like either a metallic gold or a silver to actually paint this color here to add some more contrast. And then here, of course, this will be brown, and then black, and more than likely black here as well. I may do a silver trigger or a gold trigger, depending on what accent colors I choose to do here. And then here, I may do silver here as well. And that way it's just silver, 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 black, silver, brown, brown on the stock. And then the nozzle up here, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. I don't know. I haven't figured that one out yet. I'm a big fan of gold, but, you know, just to make it so that it's obvious that it's not an actual real weapon, but I don't know. I may stick with black as well. We'll see. We'll see what I come up with. Now, the first step, which, you know, unfortunately, this is the part where I'm going to speed through here, and you're going to see a time lapse. The first step here is that I have to unscrew this entire blaster. Good times. So let's start. Now, I will tell you that one of the things that I do when I unscrew the blasters, I do take the blasters completely apart when I paint them, and I save all of the screws and all of the smaller internal parts in one bag. I also take a photo of the internals of the blaster, usually if there's not an internals online, and that is what I use to go ahead and actually guide myself in putting it back together. Sometimes when I put the blasters together, I'll take apart any locks that are not necessary and remove them from the actual blaster itself. In this blaster's case, if there's a slam fire mechanism in there, I might go ahead and just remove it because you don't need slam fire with this blaster, if we're being perfectly honest. With a single fire blaster, there's no reason for that. Now, one of the things I will tell you that you want to make sure that you do is that when you put the blaster back together, you definitely want to make sure that you put some sort of lubricant on the sliding area. That is where the pump grip actually slides, because that way you don't have to worry about paint scratching off. Definitely do a clear coat seal, because if not, you're going to run into issues that paint is going to scrape off immediately. So what I can see here is that we're going to have to actually be very careful with this area. When I paint this, I might put some tape over here just to keep the inside of this actually regular without putting any other paint on here, because I do not want to mess that up. So this is 2 pieces, and it has a total of 4 screws. 1, 2, 3, and 4. They have 2 skinny long screws and 2 standard size screws. These are the standard size screws. These are the skinny long screws. Of course, there are some hidden screws underneath here, so now that we take those off, we can actually finish completely unscrewing this blaster. So as I said, this is 2 separate pieces, or I should say it's a separate piece of plastic. It is not necessary for the rest of the blaster. This is just an accent. As you can see, it is molded to this part of the plastic itself. So there is that. There are no hidden screws in this section that you have to worry about. I am going to point out one thing. this tiny little screw here. As you see, it's tiny, tiny little screw. Different size than all the others. That goes up on this front part right here. Quick note, if you've noticed, not all of the screws are coming out of their holes. That's okay. I've loosened them enough that once I actually tip the blaster over, they should fall out. Okay, now this blaster should be able to come apart now, I believe. I think I've unscrewed all the screws here. Let's see what we got here. Are you wanting to be a pain in the butt? Okay, I got all the screws out. All those look to be loose. Let's see if I can get a flathead in here. I knew it. I was afraid of this. This piece is clipped on. So it has 4 clips. You got to be very careful when you actually unclip it. You want to make sure that it doesn't break. So I'm using a flathead to actually peel that off. Victory. None of the clips broke. So there's that. Of course, now that this is tipped over, as you can see, we have a whole bunch of screws here now. They're all about the same size. So that's fine. Put all of these in one pile. I was able to make note of where the specialty screws went, so we are good to go there. So the buttstock actually comes apart in 3 different pieces, or 4 different pieces. You have this piece right here, you have one side, you have the other side, and then of course you have this piece of plastic right here. So this actually begs to be painted, and that is wonderful. Now from here, there should be one more screw, which is a hidden screw right here. That is not surprising. It is very reminiscent of the Slingfire. Now this blaster should definitely come open. I will tell you that if you have difficulty opening up a blaster at first and you bought it secondhand, understand that that's a good chance that that blaster has never been opened, because once you open up a blaster one time, it is easier usually to open up the next time unless you painted it. All right, so all the last screws are out, and victory. This right here is clipped. That is easy to pop out. which means that yes, you can paint this. So we're going to bend this part over, open upwards a little bit to get to this clip out. Man, that is really tight in there. Let's see what I have to do here. Yep. Come on, Harmonica, we don't want to break this. Let me give myself some more working space here. A bit of a broken nail there. All right, so I may have broken a clip on this one. I think I did. No, I just bent the crap out of it. So when I put this piece back in, it's going to be very delicate, but that's all right. That should fit in there. And worst comes to worst, once I paint this, that will cover up the white marking there of the bent plastic. And I could always just glue it back on, if anything, because there's enough surface area there that you can use. So there's that. And that is that piece done. Now, for the internals of this blaster, congratulations, here's a look at the internals. That is pretty simple. You have a plunger tube here. While I actually have this blaster open, I may go ahead and basically redo the seal on the O-ring and lube this tube up a little bit, maybe get a little bit more performance out of it. We'll see. I do enjoy the fact that they stuck with a red tube down here. There's this certain uniformity, which is kind of nice, even though you don't really see the tube when you actually load the breech, but that's fine. Given that you're not really going to see that, I may actually keep the red, and at least for this actual tube. But this piece, though, definitely needs to go. That's going to be painted right there. Now, all of this is going to have to come out, and it looks like it may be one piece. This unscrews here. There's this spring here. I don't know what this is. I don't know what that spring is for. But it is definitely there, and this might all be one piece, except for the trigger. So we have one silver screw here. I don't see any other screws in here. Nope. There's that spring that came out. And there's the trigger. That's a funky trigger. I don't think I've ever seen a Nerf trigger designed like this before. It looks hyper realistic. Oh, there's another piece that fell out. So I guess that goes like that. And that's where the spring rests. So that is your actual mechanism, and there is your plunger rod and your spring and your tube and the air restrictor. Now, if I wanted to, I could really take out that air restrictor. I don't know if I'm going to do that, though. I might take out the peg, only because that way I can actually use half-length mega darts, and we'll see. This actually feels pretty well lubricated, so I might leave that like that. So, then, of course, you have the actual barrel, which is all one piece. Okay. And then this, I guess, unclips. I don't know why you would do that. Why would this be something that opens up? That's just goofy. I don't know why they would do this, but that comes apart in 2 parts. So, okay. Well, I guess that leaves me no choice but to paint this one solid color just to make my life easier. I could try taping up just a part of it and leaving the rest, but I think I'm going to be lazy on this one. The question is, do I go with the silver or do I go with the gold? Probably the aluminum, the brushed aluminum. That might look better, I'll be honest. Now, I do see lubrication all along here. That's fine. But I do also want to take apart this piece right here.
Get this part elevated, put it over.
Boom. And much like that last one, as you can see, we have that bent piece of plastic right there. So I think we're going to go with the silver, or the aluminum, and then the black with the brown. I think that will be the best color scheme here. Yeah. That is what we'll do. Now, the other factor that I need to determine is whether or not I actually want to keep the elevated Fortnite and the Nerf logos. I'll be honest with you, it's going to require a lot of sanding in order to do this. You're probably not going to see the sanding process itself because that is just using a standard hand sander that I'm going to use. And I'm going to get this sanded down as much as possible. We use for this a rough or a medium rough sandpaper. I don't unfortunately have a sample of it here in front of me at my workshop, but that is what you want to use because you want to not only strip the paint, but you also want to strip the actual plastic itself and actually get this as smooth as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, but then when you come back, you're going to see my garage. Please forgive the mess. This was not something that I was actually planning to do today, but you know what? Since I'm feeling in the mood, we're going to get that taken care of, and we're going to go from there. All right, so as you can see, this is my painting area. This is actually much smaller than it looks. Cramped quarters, but this is where I'm actually going to paint the details of those things. If I pan up, you'll see that there's my car tire. And that is just a cardboard box that I use to paint on because we're in my garage. So we're going to go out of focus really quick. The paint that I'm using is actually Rust-Oleum brand, and this is a metallic finish. This is a metallic that comes off like a silver, and it is rich, shiny finish, fast drying. It's a bright coat, and this is actually a 3-in-1 where it is a paint and primer. So you don't have to worry about actually putting a primer on these parts. Now, what I like to do is that I actually like to flip the parts over so that I paint the inside first, and then I'll flip it over and paint the outside. This is about a 1 hour to 2 hour drying period. So unfortunately, because of the time that I'm recording this, this is actually going to take multiple days to paint. So that is basically a first coat. Now you will see that on this piece right here, I have what looks like to be some parts where the paint is not adhering. That is why you have to be careful about sanding. In this case, I actually skipped that process, and that is the end result. I kind of want to show you this so you don't make the same mistake that I did here. All that I have to do is that I'm going to have to apply another coat once this coat dries, and that'll help to even it out. But as you see, it's a nice shiny metallic coat. This is going to be the accents, and it's going to match really well with that black and that brown respectively. Now, what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm actually going to get in here and I'm going to block the view really quick because there's some spots here where you can see some colors on the sides. It's going to actually help me out in the future if I just get it from here at an angle. So that's pretty much it. Obviously, we have that one spot. I need to let this coat dry, and then I will reapply another coat on this particular piece. before I flip it over and do the other side. You'll see that I actually went and got the inside of the barrel a little bit from the one side. When I flip it over, I will get the inside of the barrel again to get the parts that I did miss. Eventually, once it all dries, I will actually hold the barrel when it's dry to touch and spray down inside and let that dry on its own prior to actually doing the clear coat. So that is it, basically. As you can see, it's a nice smooth coat here. You'll notice that I didn't cake on all of the actual inner workings. I just wanted to get enough because when you put the blaster back together, there's always that little part along the edges that doesn't have quite the color scheme that you want, and it'll have parts of the original color that shine through eventually. By doing it this way, you make sure to get an even coat on both sides, or at least an even enough coat on both sides that from the outside, it looks like that is the original color of the actual piece, as opposed to the bright, obnoxious red. When you are painting, you'll see smaller pieces like this one. It tends to flip over. That is okay, because that piece, it is concaved, meaning that there's a gap in there, so if it flips over, you're not going to have to worry about it sticking because the part that's mainly wet is the part that is a bowl, and that is fine. And this is quick drying, so again, in about an hour, I should be able to peel that off, flip the other side over, paint that other side, flip this side, paint it, and so on and so forth. But now I'm going to get to sanding these other pieces, and hopefully we'll be able to paint those tonight as well. Okay, so I changed my mind. You are going to see my sanding process, and in the meantime, you get a sneak peek of the mess of blasters that I have. Of course, behind me is the rival wall, and over here, I'm not sure if you can actually see that. G-Rex is behind the camera. You'll see a pile of blasters. Some of them I've reviewed, some of them are not. A lot of them are actually going to be given away shortly at a Father's Day event. Now, sander, sanding paper. We're going to try to get rid of this Fortnite logo. That is a lot of plastic. Alright, well, for the sanity of my neighbors, given that it is nighttime, I'm actually going to close my garage door here and do this so that we can dampen the noise a little bit. Okay, so now that the garage is door, I don't have to worry about the neighbors calling the cops on me for sanding at 10 o'clock at night. Karens. That is a pretty elevated logo. Okay, well, we're starting to make some progress here. Okay. Definitely making progress. Now there's just a little bit of an edge here and a little bit of an edge down here, and then the Fortnite logo is going to be just flattened, which we can cover the rest up with just multiple layers of paint, but alright, so as you can see, the Fortnite logo is gone. This is still a little bit on the rough side, but not as rough as it could be. This is ready to paint once I actually wipe off this excess plastic dust off of it. Of course, you'll notice that I'm now covered in plastic dust on my shirt. Do not worry, this comes off in the wash without a problem. Let me go get some rubbing alcohol, and we'll be back with the cleanup. All right, so like before, I flipped the blaster edge over. This time I'm going to be using Rust-Oleum's 2X Ultimate Ultra Matte Black Again, this is a paint and primer combo, so you don't have to use a primer. This is actually a really good primer. If you've seen any of my photos where I've done the color shiftings, this is actually what I do as a base for the color shift. I may do a little bit of a color shift blue on this stock, only because it has a nice little midnight look to it, but not go overboard so it's not actually blue and there's more black showing. This is the other side of the blaster, which I'm also going to paint black. I wanted you to notice that I actually did paint this one, the interiors. I made sure to get a lot of black in here, only because when that door opens up, you're going to see the inside of the blaster, so I want it to look uniform. Now, for the color shift, this is actually what I've been using, which is Rust-Oleum Color Shift. It shifts colors at different angles. It goes from like a blue to a lighter blue, and also like a midnight blue. I'm actually going to put this just on the interior spot of the blaster where the jam door does open up, and I'm going to do a light shade of it, only because I do really like the way this looks. As you can see, the primary color is still the actual black itself, but you do have a little bit of the color shift there, and it's not too obnoxious. So I feel like when I put that little liberal amount, or I should say that conservative amount, all throughout the exterior of the blaster, it's going to look really sharp. So now we have to wait for about an hour and a half for this coat of paint to dry, and then we will flip over and take care of the rest. Unfortunately, due to the lack of space on the cardboard, I am not able to paint the actual stock itself, though you can see underneath the actual main body, that is the color that the stock is going to be. It's almost like a rusty brown, or as G-Rex likes to call it, a bloody red brown. The paint that we are using for that is the Behr Premium called Wild Manzanita. Wild Manzanita, if you don't know anything about Spanish, manzana is apple. So that is a wild apple, like red, but it's more of a brown color that comes out. All right, so a day later and a costume change, I'm actually back, and I went ahead and actually applied the second coat of paint on the other side of these pieces earlier this morning. I was not able to film that because Mrs. Normatico's car was blocking where I could place the camera. I actually had to move things around here in my garage so I could actually work tonight because Mrs. Normatico is taking the other part of the garage. Married life, y'all. Now, as you can see, we actually have a pretty smooth paint job here. There are the parts where that is where the bubbles were at, and they kind of smoothed out. Here we have some scratches, which normally I would actually have sanded this down. Those scratches are there from the actual blaster itself. Like I said, I got this one used when I did the review. Had it not been for a LARP setting that's based in a post-apocalyptic setting, I would have actually shaved all of this down, gotten this nice and smooth. However, given that it's supposed to have this weathered, kind of a beaten up look, I am actually going to go ahead and leave it like this. I could go ahead and correct that, but I'm not going to. That is intentional. Now, I am going to point your attention to one little thing here. You will see when I connected these two pieces, there is a little bit of orange here. Unfortunately, that's from when you connect the two pieces. There's going to be a little bit of scrapage, and there's a little bit of scrapage up here. That is where it comes to reapplying the paint. So I'm actually going to go ahead and reapply another small coat of paint here now that I have this piece connected. That way, that smooths over that orange section, and I'm going to try to see what I can do about this little top part here because, again, there's some roughage right here because of the shaved plastic, but I want to go ahead and actually see if I can get the little flecks of orange that are showing there now to not be that way. But other than that, this, I guess, it's almost like a brushed aluminum, is going to look really good with the black of the blaster. So we're actually going to also work on one other thing. Sorry, I'm walking around. Now, here we have the Nerf logo, and it is on both sides. Now, I have the option that if I wanted to, I could leave the Nerf logo on one side or on both sides, and then once this is actually painted with that bare, burnt manzanita look, I could go ahead and actually put like a gold acrylic on the Nerf logo so you can actually still see the Nerf logo, and that way you could actually tell, hey, it is a Nerf blaster. If this was a blaster that I was going to take out into a public setting, yes, I would absolutely, definitely do that. And given that there are other events that I may go to where this might actually be a character type cosplay thing, I am going to choose to do so on at least one side of the blaster, which will be the pretty side. So I'm going to see what I can do about shaving this down. That way you don't see the Nerf on one side. It is going to be the same method that I used to get rid of the Fortnite logo, so you're probably not going to see me do that, only because of the fact that you already know how to do it. Now, again, it is the same thing. If you wanted to do this at home, you could do it on this side. That is fine. It is entirely up to you. I kind of like to actually keep that logo on there because when I do my hand acrylics, and you're going to see how I do that, I'm very meticulous on how I do that, and that's where I get those really cool looking designs that you've seen in the community page where you see the Nerf logo is in a different color. You do a very thin brush, and you just very gently do this. Now, I will tell you that it photographs a lot better than it looks in person. When you look at it in person close, it does have some imperfections because, again, that is hand brushed. But at a distance of this far from the camera, you're going to look at it and be like, wow, that looks really cool, Robotico. So, again, it all depends as to how close up you're looking. It is very much like, and I'm going to hate to compare myself to a famous painter, but it's almost like a Rembrandt painting where the closer you get to it, and the Monets, where the closer you get to them, you realize, oh, that doesn't look that good. But when you stand back, you're like, wow, no, that's actually a masterpiece. Again, I don't want to compare myself saying I'm that good, but you get the point. So I'm going to get to work on these, and then you're going to see me paint the other side of the blasters, and that way we can see about putting this together. Hopefully we'll be able to get this done tonight because, yeah, I would hate to have to film this over the course of 3 days. Okay, so I finished actually sanding the quote-unquote ugly side of this. As you can see, Nerf logo is gone. You can see some elements left here from where I was sanding. That is actually smooth. That is just from where I applied the actual hand sanitizer to wipe off the plastic dust. And you can see what looked to appear some grooves here. That is okay because the paint is going to seep into those grooves and cover that up. You are not going to see that once the paint is done. So this side is now ready to paint. We're not going to switch screens, so you can actually go back to the painting process. When I flip the blaster over, paint it, and then I'll apply the burnt manzanita to the actual stock. All right, so I'm going to pan here. You can see my painting area. This is from the other side, and you can see a collection of spray paint cans there. To the left here, you're going to see the actual blaster and the rear part of the stock. Then you see the buttstock and the priming handle. And then there you see the accent pieces, which are applied in silver, or the brushed aluminum. Now, there is plenty of space there. They look close together, but because of how close I get when I actually paint, you'll see that I do not have any overspray. So I'm going to start with the black paint on the left side, the burnt manzanita on the right, and then that side over there is already taken care of, so we should be good to go. Let's go ahead and actually start off with the black paint. which again, it is the Rust-Oleum paint, like the mat. Give it a good shake. All right, so you will see that I moved all the way around to get all the different sides and different angles. That way, the black is applied evenly, and you're not going to see any traces of blue, which is important because the last thing you want is to see that bright blue pop up between the actual black. So we should be good there. Of course, I will do some of the, a little bit of the blue color shift in the front of the blaster because I think that's going to look really nice. And we'll go from there. Okay, color shift blue, here we go. Now, as you can see, I didn't do too much of the color shift blue. I just put enough so it's going to actually just blend with the blue back into the black. So that should look really cool once it's dried up. You'll see the final product. Now, of course, comes the burnt manzanita on this side, which is the Behr paint. Now, you're going to notice right here that here I'm not going to paint the backside of the priming handle because I need that to be smooth up against the paint. And whenever you put spray paint on plastic, it does not, for some reason, come out smooth. So this part, however, we can do this. So this part, unfortunately, is going to take a little bit longer because that paint takes a while to dry. So there you have it. Now, I don't know how well this is going to come out on your end, but on my side in person, that looks closer to a brown than a red, and it's going to look really cool. Very much almost like a cherry brown or like a cherry wood. So that should be good to go. I think this is going to look really nice when it's all said and done. So unfortunately, now we have to play the waiting game, and we have to wait for the paint to dry, so we'll see. All right, so here we are several hours later, and the bottom sides are dry to the touch, which means that we can now flip over and paint a little bit. I just want to point out that right around here, we have some red left. I'm going to paint just on the outside. Try not to get the actual inside, which is the part that rubs against the actual inner part of the blaster, and go from there. That's a dangerous spray paint. Sometimes you get stuff on your fingers. Now you notice that what I did there was that I was very careful when I sprayed so that I got as much as possible on the outside without getting too much on the inside. Unfortunately, you're always going to get a little bit of paint on the inside when you paint like that. Eventually what's going to happen is that this is going to dry, so I'm going to flip that piece over and get the other side that still has some red on the back side. That I may actually have to put on gloves to hold because that part is not going to stand because you can see the curve. However, this piece, which is the back, is all nice and black. I'm actually going to repaint and touch up on this side right here because I can still see some red here and go from there. However, this piece right here, You can see the black, the color shift is there in the front, and it is nice solid black here as well. Same thing with this side. I do have some bubbles over here, so I'm going to see what I can do to smooth that out and go from there. I don't know why that's bubbling up. That wasn't there on the paint before, and this is paint that's not supposed to bubble up like that. So let's see what I can do regarding that. Of course, when I painted this, unfortunately, we were dealing with a lot of humidity, and that's one of the side effects. I do see some blue here, so I'm actually going to go ahead and touch that up right now and go from there. So we are now on day 3, and I am ready to do one little bit of a touch up here. I just want to point something out and just kind of zoom it in here. So you can see there, sorry for the jerky movements here, there's a blue spot on that side right there of the buttstock area, or I should say where the stock attachment is. And then there's a little bit of blue showing over on the top here. There's more blue in that little crevice, but that is actually going to be covered. However, I want to go ahead and actually spray a little bit of black on here just to cover everything up. So I got my black paint. And I did notice that there's some blue showing on these screw holes right here. So I'm going to go ahead and actually apply that there. And that'll be dry in about an hour. Now, in the meantime, this is going to be a little bit of an experiment here. I could try to just do acrylics with some silver there to add some scoring. But what I'm going to actually try now is that I'm going to use some of the silver paint from a distance, the brushed aluminum paint, and see if I can just get just a tiny little bit of it on there and see how that looks. Of course, if I mess up, I can always just cover with black. Now that adds some wear and tear effect, which should look pretty decent on the blaster. Because, of course, no actual gun is purely black, and this way it actually looks more worn out, more for a apocalyptic setting. You can see some of the aluminum there that just adds some fading in the black, and we'll see how that looks when it dries up. Of course, if I don't like it, I can always just go to completely black and go from there. So we're going to let this dry and then put it together and see what it looks like. A couple of hours later, and I am done with the painting. I do want to let you know, I did put a clear coat on the actual blaster shell itself, but I wanted to show you what it looks like afterwards. I didn't really show you the clear coat application because it's much like the same as painting. You just shake up the clear coat, you pour it on there, and you just play the waiting game. So that's pretty simple. But this is the final product of the actual blaster shell itself. As you can see, the actual experiment with the brushed aluminum spraying from a distance, it actually gives it that good weathered look, which is what I'm going for. This is supposed to be something that has been part of a post-apocalyptic wasteland, and I think that looks really abused. So that's one side. And then you do still have the Fortnite logo on this side. That is okay. I did not shave that off. I left that on purpose. Maybe later on, if I actually wanted to paint that, I could, but it's just there. That way everyone could see what the blaster actually is, in case anyone wanted to know that. And you can really see here where the blue, I guess the color shift, does just slightly there. Let me see if I can get that angle there. See a little bit of blue there, which is just fine, and that is what I was going for. So all in all, I am really happy with how this paint job looked. Now, I'm going to set these to the side because there are more pieces here, and we are still not done painting. Because, of course, now we want the details. Of course, this is what the brushed aluminum looks like on the details. That's going to look really sharp and contrast with the black and the aluminum really well. And this is the end of the buttstock in solid black. And the actual handle on the buttstock is going to go really well. Now, the buttstock itself. I said burnt manzanita, and that is what it looks like. It is a nice shade of brown. It's almost like a reddish brown. That's what it dries like. You can see the Nerf logo there, and that is what the next step of the painting process is about. So for this, I'm actually going to be using acrylic paints. In this case, I use the Deco Art Metallic. This is in metallic gold, and I'm actually going to be using one of these little holders here. As you can see, I've used it in the past for black and metallic. And this is where I actually have to use a little bit more skill. I will be using a very thin brush, like so, and I'm going to have to paint the Nerf logo. So it is a little bit of a nerve-wracking thing sometimes because I have to be very precise. We're going to switch the camera view now, and you're going to see this process. Bear with me because this does take a while, but we're going to go ahead and actually do a little bit of, how shall we say, high-speed photography or videography. Okay, so bear in mind that when you're actually painting on a table surface, I like to actually use paper towel here, only because of the fact that when I need to dry off the excess paint on the brush, I can go ahead and do so. And you're going to see that I try to just get the actual tip of the brush wet with the paint, and I start very gently with solid lines. Now, the good part about using acrylic paint is, hopefully you're not going to see this, but if I don't actually get the part that I need to get and it goes onto the, I should say, the brown not Nerf logo part, with this acrylic paint, I can actually go ahead and actually just wipe it off with a little bit of paper towel or my finger, and it should wipe off as long as it's not completely dried yet. So I got to be very careful here. Alright, so you can see that we have the end here. There are some spots here. I need to let this dry where you're going to be able to see the brown just shine through a little bit. I need to let that dry before I apply a second coat. But the end is pretty much done. There's just a couple little bits here where I could make a sharper edge. And that should be it. So that end is done. Next we're going to start with the E. Okay, so as you can see, the N and the E are complete. There are a couple of, again, some brown spots here on the E that I'm going to wait for this initial coat to dry, and then I'll just gently tap over those spots with some wet paint, and that should fill out those areas. So you're going to notice that some of my brush strokes are very delicate. Sometimes it doesn't seem like there's any paint that goes down. That is because I'm trying to get to the very tip of the brush, and I'm just lightly touching against the surface because I want to make sure that when I'm on the edges, I don't go over. So that is intentional. And the R's tend to be a little trickier because there's that curvature, and I want to make sure that I hit it just right. And it's also much harder when I have an audience of people watching me. All right, so there was like a micron of a smidge of paint that fell off the R. However, that actually does match with the way that the lettering works, so I'm going to leave it there and go on to the F now. Okay, so we have the Nerf actually printed. Listen to me. We have the Nerf painted. Now comes the swoosh. This is going to be where I have to determine, do I want to stick with the gold or do I want to go with another color? I think the way that this gold looks on the brown, I'm going to go with the gold. Normally I could change this up to be red, but I think I like the way that the gold looks. All right, so that is that. As you can see, it's nice and clean lines there. Gold on the brown looks really sharp. This, of course, now has to dry. Acrylic paints usually dry in about 5 to 10 minutes. So once this dries, I might put another, excuse me, I got the hiccups. I might put another clear coat on here, just on this side. So now we actually get to put together the rest of the blaster because this part is separate. It does not need to go all at one time. Okay, so while that section is now drying, we can start putting together the blaster. Of course, this is the side where the screws go in. First thing I'm going to go ahead and start do is I'm going to go ahead and clip these back in where they belong. And that should hopefully go like that, I believe. And that should go like that, maybe. Hopefully, we'll see. There we go. That clips right in just like so. And this piece is going to go like so. That's looking really sharp right there. So next section. Should go like such. That's going to slide like that. And now we set this part to the side. And then we grab the part that you mount everything into. So again, we're going to start with the outer clip. There's not one to go in there. There we go. Just use a flathead screwdriver, and I just push that right in safely, and that's it. We do have a little bit of the paint that's flaked off there when I clip that in there, but that is okay. Again, that adds to the battle damage look. And then this should just ride in right here. We have this section that's going to fit right here. And that is really starting to look sharp. Now, of course, we do have our plastic pieces and our springs in here. So I want to get these ready because next come the internals. Now you probably noticed in the beginning of the video I mentioned putting everything in a bag. That is what I went ahead and did. That way all of my springs and all my screws stay together. And then we have one internal screw here. Got to see if I can figure out or remember where this went. I believe that it was just one screw that held the internal mechanism in. Put all of these external screws back in here until I'm ready for them. Yep, drop the screw. Okay. Now we have our internal mechanism. Really quick, this internal mechanism, once you actually take it out, this is two separate pieces. Of course, the plunger rod is right there, and that just slips in right and out. So that is a pretty decent setup. I kind of like that. Now, this is very intuitive, how it goes. These holes line up to the pegs on the inside where they go, and you just slip them right in. And that is there. Now, this screw goes right here. So I'm going to grab my screwdriver and put that in. Now this piece, I think I just put myself into a corner. Okay, so this piece goes right here. I don't know exactly what this does, but it was here, so I'm putting it back in where it goes. That slips in there. And I'm just gonna assume that that just slips right down there like so. Well, kind of like so. So you can't figure this out. Okay. Ah. Oh. Okay, whoever designed this is kind of a jerk. Okay, that's how that goes. It springs up. And I'm going to naturally assume that that goes like this right here. All right, so that sets up like there. That is kind of finicky. It might be easier if you actually set that in place before you try to put this in. Yeah, that was my bad. Okay, so we have the spring here, and then right here is where this spring goes, and it connects to our trigger mechanism, which should go right here, I believe. Nope, right here. Yep, just like that. And then that fits down there. This little spring should go here and connect. Oh, wow. That's a tight spring mechanism. like so. That is it. That is the internals. That is pretty dang simple. So we, of course, can now close this blaster up. Hopefully this will work. Yep, that should work like that. This is going to be the hard part because of this door. Hopefully that can close properly like this. Please work properly. Nope, that's not wanting to close. Let's see if we can figure out how this is going to close properly, because this is this could be a nuisance. What if I do this? Since all this is just one piece, this should be able to just close like this. Okay, so it's going to be counterintuitive. You're going to want to flip the blaster over in order to close it. But there are more pieces that are missing. You're now going to want to include this right here. And just like so. All right. The blaster is almost back together. Now comes the annoying part. All of these screws. And then, of course, the priming handle, which will go on last. So, first one is the tiniest screw, which goes here. Okay, so I think I might have put the wrong screw in here, or something's going on with this screw. Because it is not wanting to fit properly in here. Oh, I guess I just need to twist it in better. Okay. Well, that would explain why I'm having issues screwing it together. It's not put together properly. So we're going to unscrew some things and try to clip this back in properly. So you saw me do something here. One of the problems that I have is that since everything is so black here with the black screws, it's kind of hard to see where the screws have gone in and where they haven't. Unfortunately, that is the curse of putting a blaster back together. Sometimes you lose track as to what's already been screwed back in. Now, I believe I've gotten all the screw holes on this part of the blaster. Pretty sure that that is screwed in. I guess not. So I got these in. That's in. And now for the pump grip. So we have the two screws here. And then the two long skinny screws. And now technically our blaster should be ready to work. Let's test it out. So it does slide. It is a little bit stiff at first, but that is to be expected because, again, when you take it apart and you put it back together again, that's always going to happen. Now, we need to test the door out real quick. That door does slide open. We can load our dart. Does it fire? Dart does fire. So we are good to go. Now, I do see here that the paint kind of like flecked off here. I am going to remedy this real fast. One surefire way to do this when you're actually using these is that you can use acrylic to touch up any scratches like this. That way you don't have to worry about spray painting again. Unfortunately, that's the curse of spray painting on a sliding mechanism. Or you can do the cheap way like I do. Now, a lot of people are against dry brushing. I happen to think that it's okay as long as you do so properly. This is just a CraftSmart paint pen in silver and aluminum. Now again, given what this blaster is being used for, it is okay for it to look a little rough. Also, once this dries, it's going to be just fine. Once that paint pen dries, it's going to actually blend in pretty well. And you'll see that it actually has a good little post-apocalyptic look to it. So now we're just waiting on the stock. But to give you an idea of what this is going to look like, I guess I can kind of show you. There we go. By the time all this is said and done, that is how that will look. Now you can just envision what it's going to look like on the other side. That is pretty sharp. Especially when you add in this effect right here. That's going to look really hot. Now we just need to wait for the acrylic to dry and you'll see the final product.